Well, all right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and it's great to see you here today on Adobe Live for the audio masterclass today, talking about how to use effects in a mix. And specifically, it's funny, over the last couple of weeks, every time I show something related to audio, last week I did something during the middle week on Adobe Live where we talked about kind of mixing sound to picture. But that was more specifically around different techniques for mixing. This is where and when and why to use particular effects, whether you're trying to create more ambience or kind of recreate the sound of an environment or a room. And you can use obviously reverb and delay for things like that, but there's specific elements when using those types of effects that really, well, just create those kind of ambient effects that you're really trying to achieve. And if you don't know those parameters, you're just going to spend a lot of time kind of looking and trying to figure out what to do. So I'm going to kind of show you directly how to do that with reverb and the differences between creating ambient spaces and then using it for effect, for dramatic effect. Then we'll take a look a little bit at some compression usage as well as some EQ and maybe a little bit of delay. So a lot of time-based effects today, really to kind of just sweeten up the sound and take it from something that sounds, just kind of flat to something that's very, very lively. So as always, we're coming to you live on YouTube, Behance, and Twitter Periscope. So thank you so much for joining. And we have our live interactive chat. What is up, Lydia? What's up, Tim? What's up, Aditi? Cody Bear, great to see you. Andrea, Cornell, Brianne, Steve, Yusunari. All right, hello. Thank you so much for joining. District Create, what is up? Desiree, nice to see you as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll cut over to my screen. And we're going to start. You're going to see a lot of video footage today that I've used. What is going on? Some side thing going on here. Multiple times on stream. One of my favorites, this piece here, See You Around. But it's just something that has lots of elements of dialogue and music and effects, and it's very easy to showcase. One other thing I want to point out, too, before we even get started here, yesterday afternoon, in the midst of doing things, all of a sudden my eyes just kind of completely wigged out, and I had this like unbelievable eye headache to the point where I started seeing like little jagged edges of. If you ever looked at like a projector, remember those old school or like rear projection TVs, and if you blink, you can kind of see the RGB beam projections. Yeah, I was seeing that yesterday. And even worse, it was like refracted. So everything was bent. Anyway, what am I trying to get at here? I haven't looked at a screen since yesterday afternoon. Hopefully my eyes hold out. Hopefully it was just a one-time weird thing. It was pretty awful. It was really bad. I was like completely out of commission for about 5 or 6 hours. Anyway, I have prescription sunglasses that I may need to put on should like light sensitivity occur. So just letting you know that if I happen to flop on some sunglasses, I'm not trying to look cool. Just trying to be able to see on a singular plane. So, yeah, thank you, Cornell. Yeah, it seems to be going all right today. It's never really happened to me before. This has never happened to me before. So hopefully it won't happen again. All right, Antonio, you are here to learn, teach us. Okay, excellent. Aditi, great. Thank you very much. All right. Cool Shade says, Wade, no problem. All right. Okay, so the first thing we're going to tackle here is using reverb to create or to recreate ambient spaces. So in this scene that I've shown many, many times, it's a bar scene. And of course, when you film on location, what's that now? Oh, what's up? Stephanie is live. Sounds like migraine, Desiree. Yeah, I think it was like an ocular migraine. My friend Aaron Rabinowitz sent me a little message about that, which I saw this morning. I think that's very possibly what it was. It was crazy. It was very psychedelic. In any case, when you shoot on set like this, of course, and you see people dancing and there's like a band and, there's glasses clinking, well, obviously none of that sound is actually there when they're doing it. Everything is captured on set quiet and dry, quiet on the set, right? And then all of that sound is added back. But it's not just a matter of adding back in ambient sound, like the sound of bar people talking and glasses clinking and music, but it's also recreating the space. Right? Even if you find a really fantastic sound effect, it doesn't necessarily have the same ambient characteristics that your visual may have. So you can use reverb and delay type effects to just emphasize and widen and really kind of glue all of that sound design together to make it feel very realistic. So let me play you kind of the mixed version of this ambient sound. And this is something that I've applied to the music. So we're going to start here with applying ambience to music. Now that may seem like an odd thing, right? Music is already mixed. Why would I want to add reverb or some kind of ambience to music? Well, in this scene, we have, he's in a bar. He's kind of contemplating right here. And then he turns around and starts having a conversation. So what happens is there's two things. First of all, he's in the bar listening to music. The music shouldn't sound like it's coming off of your earbuds. It shouldn't sound direct. There should still be some space to simulate like he's in a bar and that's the band playing. Unless it's just incidental music, right? There's a difference. There's a difference between incidental or underscore where it doesn't matter. It's there regardless of the space you're in. Here, he's in a bar, he's hearing a band, and the band is playing in the bar. That's kind of the idea. So we need to create the space based on the visual here. So when he's in this particular scene, this kind of semi-talking head close-up here, we're hearing a lot of the direct sound of the band, but when he turns around, the band is now sort of behind him, and it has to feel more ambient. So let's take a listen to what we have here just real quickly first. All right, here we go.
Hi, I'd like to go.
Okay, so you can kind of hear, right? It's sort of very upfront and direct in the beginning, and then as he turns around, it feels like the band is behind him. It's not just quieter, but you actually feel like you're in that space. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to solo just the music here. And again, we're going to focus on using this kind of technique for this very specific kind of thing. And this doesn't have to just be like, oh, this is only good for bar scenes. No, this is good for anything when you're trying to, again, recreate environments. So what I want to do first is, if you take a look here, and I'm not going to go through all of the track structuring. Again, you can watch last week's mixing sound to picture for understanding how I did certain things regarding the submixes and things. I don't want to go into all the detail because this is really meant to be focused on effects. But basically what's happening is I have a submix or an effects send that I'm using, and I'm sending it pre-fader. Now, just real quickly, on the music track, I'm sending this to another track pre-fader. And what that means is it's going to send the signal, all of the audio from that music track, from that music clip, to another track in my mixer. And because it's pre-fader, what that means is I'm going to have complete independent control of that additional version of the music, in this case with some reverb on it, so I can kind of control how much ambience over time, or again, just kind of what they call ride the fader to increase or decrease the amount of ambience. I can change the position of my original fader, and it doesn't matter. That ambience it'll always maintain its volume level because I've sent it pre-fader before this fader. So it's basically hopping over here before it gets there. So I have total control over this now to be reverberated sound. And then on that send, I have our studio reverb here. What I want to do first is I just want to play this back dry. All right, so I'm going to turn the reverb off and let you kind of listen to what this sounds like. All right, just the music. All right, take a listen. All right, so you can hear it's just dry and it's just a volume shift. In fact, if you were paying attention to the screen, you'll see I had some automation on the fader here. It goes from around -14 down to -28. It's dry. So if I were to bring everything else back in, let's unsolo. I mean, it's okay, but it just, if you're paying attention and really focusing, it just feels like you're just playing music. Like you don't actually get the sense that there's a band in the bar. But we want to give that sense that there's a band in the bar. So to do that, you need some ambience, all right? So let's go back to soloing this, wind this back, and let's take a look at what I did here for the reverb. Aditi, feels very realistic, makes you feel like you're there. Exactly, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. What is up, Catherine Lacoste? All right. Steve. Avoid going full Steve. Protect the eyes. Yes, indeed. All right. Put on those shades. Very cool. Okay. So normally I don't typically use presets for these kinds of things, but in our Studio Reverb, which by the way you can find by going to Reverb, Studio Reverb under Effects, it's in the exact same location as it is in Audition. We actually have a preset here called Outside the Club, which I think I might have made for this effect 100 years ago, or modified in any case. So this one, just to kind of break this down a little bit, couple characteristics. If you're wanting to simulate something from behind, there's a couple things you need to keep in mind when you're using reverb. First of all, it's not going to be very bright, right? So when the music starts, even when we had the ambient sound on, it's very bright. It's kind of, just it feels like it's coming off of the, I always say off the record, but like off of the MP3. It feels like you're hearing it like streamed off of Spotify. But when the person turns around, not only is it going to need to feel like it's further away, but you're going to lose some of that high end. High frequency is the first thing to get attenuated, okay, when you move away from things. High frequencies are very, very short waveforms. This is why they don't travel long distances. Think of it this way. You're at a concert, right? When you're driving up to the concert, when we used to drive up to concerts, you can always hear the bass, right? And you can kind of hear this bass and boom. That's because low frequency waves are very, very long and they travel very long distances. Neighbors, right? You've got some neighboring apartment or upstairs, down, whatever. You can always feel and hear that bass. It's the high frequency that is attenuated, that's missing, right? As you get further away or turn your head or whatnot. So that's the same kind of thing you need to achieve. So to do that, we use what's called a high frequency cut. So if you're wanting to simulate that something is like outside of the club or behind you, now this is fairly extreme here. This is at around 897 hertz. But what that's doing is it's cutting off all of the high frequencies. So to kind of illustrate that, let me play this for you where it's already kind of in place. Okay, so I don't know how well this is going to come over the headphones here because we don't have a lot of the dry signal implemented here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this back and I'm going to let you hear. I'm going to readjust that high frequency cut and you're going to hear how it kind of gets brighter and darker. All right, let's keep it at its kind of full spectrum audio and then I'll bring it down to around that 800 hertz. Here we go. All right, could we hear that difference? Want to see it in the chat? Can you hear it? If you can't, you may need to go see a doctor. But you could hear, right, that as the high frequency I was letting everything pass through, it was very, very bright. And then as I started to cut those high frequencies to around 866 hertz, it gets just darker and warmer, okay? You can still hear remnants of the high frequency, but the key here is it's just a little bit darker and a little bit warmer. Oh yeah, yes, awesome. Okay, love seeing it in the chat. All right, you can also see that I have a low frequency cut here. This is more for protecting your mix. Whenever you're reverberating something, you almost never, I don't say never, never, because in sound design, there's moments where you might want to add reverberation or ambience to low frequency. That creates a totally different effect in and of itself. But low frequency cut for something like this is just going to eliminate making bass frequencies echo. Remember, bass frequencies already travel longer distances. They permeate through everything, right? This is why anyone who's new to mixing, oh, love it, 8-bit blood, nice. This is why if you're new to mixing, the hardest thing to control are bass frequencies. All right, more often than not, when people present me with mixes, they're like, yeah, it's too boomy, it's too bassy. It sounds great in the studio, and then I go in the car, and it's like way too bassy. Because bass is hard, right? And the reason for that is that a lot of different sounds, whether it's voices, instruments, ambience, blah, 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 occupy lower frequencies. So wherever possible, you want to control those. And in this case, I'm not reverberating any of the kick drum or the bass of that music. So that's why I have it cut at 385 hertz, okay? Damping and diffusion, again, damping is going to do just that. It's going to take it and kind of just make it a little bit more muffled, right? Take off some of that high-end edge. And then diffusion is kind of how it spreads about. Now again, I don't want this to feel like super stereo. It's in the background. You're just supposed to sense it and perceive it. So I keep the diffusion at around 20%, all right? Now, a couple other elements here that are important for recreating room ambience. First of all, decay, 2000 milliseconds. So a 2-second reflection, basically. Now that's a little bit long, but bars are, you know, even if they're small, 2 seconds is kind of legit. The longer you go, the more echoey it's going to get, right? The smaller you go, the shorter you go, the more ambient it's going to sound. So again, if I play this back and we start messing about with the decay, take a listen to the difference here. All right. If you're at 9,000 milliseconds, that's like horror film. Ah! And you're hearing the decay of the scream, and someone comes in and right. Not for this. I mean, again, if you're trying to create like a crazy, psychedelic, head swirling, everything is kind of mishmash together, sure, you can use a longer decay. Sounds like a giant cave. Exactly. Right. The more decay you have, the larger the ambient space, the more echo, right, you're going to feel. This is not a cave. This is an interior space. So frankly, even 2000 was a little bit big. So I'm going to keep this at around 1700. Width, this is, again, how wide in stereo. 50% on this preset is the default. You can mess about with that. We don't need to do that here. Again, I don't want this exactly totally mono, but the ambient stereo of this doesn't matter so much. It's going to matter when we get to the crowd noise, and we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, and then of course you also have early reflection. Again, this is something which is cool to listen to here. This is also known as like pre-delay, or pre-reverb rather. This is kind of how much you hear of that ambience in advance of the dry signal. Now again, I have very little dry signal going on here. Again, this is that independent fader with reverb. So for this, to create a very ambient space, I cranked up the reflections to 100, all right? If you back them off, it's just going to feel slightly less ambient, okay? So early reflections, it's kind of exactly what it says. It's like you're in the space, how soon you kind of hear sound bouncing off these imaginary walls. And I want it to bounce off them immediately and fully. Now, the real key to doing this is in the wet-dry balance, all right? So in this case, I have it 80% wet and 15% dry. And the reason for that is, first of all, again, this fader is controlling the sound of that music by itself. So on the original fader, this one here, this is the original music. It is dry. We already have the dry signal there. So in theory, I could take this dry signal and just make this 0. To be completely honest. 15% is just going to add a little bit more definition in there. So let me play this for you so you can hear. So this is totally just the wet signal, just the ambient signal. All right, and let's add some more of the dry in there. Okay, so again, the less dry you have, now you're just kind of hearing the echo, the reflection of the band behind him. And this is totally going to sell that image, all right? Yes, nice. Steve, wow, Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, yes. You, O'Connor. So sad, right? We don't remember what a band in a bar sounds like. Yes, that's why we now have to recreate this, okay? So, throw it all together, all right? Let's put this back now. And what I can do here is, let's take a listen to a totally dry version.
Hi, yeah, hi.
Okay. Sounds okay. Like if this was your first time hearing it, you probably wouldn't think much of it. But now let's hear it with everything balanced, reverberated, all right, changing the ambience as he's turning his head facing the camera. And this is now really going to sell the environment that we're in. Take a listen.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get into
Okay.
All right. Aditi, you just got it. All right. There you go. Okay. So again, now you're asking, didn't it go a little too low? Not for me. Entirely up to you, right? Remember, there's dialogue here. So once the dialogue starts going, the whole point of that music is it's just in the background. And we have all this other ambient sound, which we're now going to tackle as well. The key is we're trying to really recreate the space. And just a little bit of ambient, short decay reverb really, really changes the mood and kind of creates that environment. Which is exactly what 8-Bit Blood just said. Rock on, man. That's awesome. Wow, we just said the exact same words. Almost creepy. Okay, so cool. All right, so let's now tackle the ambient sounds of the bar. Okay, so now these are, again, kind of special because this is just sound design, right? So we need to recreate the sound of a bar. So here's the original dry sound. And we've got 2 tracks of ambience going on here. Okay? So again, nothing wrong with that. Sounds good. But it's also, for one thing, it's a little bit sort of mono sounding. I want to spread it out a little bit more. Now, part of using something called stereo expansion, which we're going to get to now, is this will do 2 things. One, it's going to widen the stereo. So you'll see, I'll do this live in a second. It's going to take that, which is already a stereo file, and it's just going to push things further to the left and right. All right. So this does 2 things. This functions in 2 areas. One, by pushing things left and right, it's also, kind of by design, dropping some of the content in the center. All right. So you're basically scooping out the center of your stereo mix so that when the dialogue comes in, it just sits very nicely right there. Stereo expansion on ambience, dialogue dead in the center, okay? So this is a really great way to do that. And you have to be careful because if you overdo it, then it just sounds like stuff is living in the discrete left and right, and then it sounds fake. So you don't want to use too much. You really have to listen carefully, but a simple application of this goes a very long way. So here, I believe it's under, is it under special? Where did I get this effect from? Time and pitch, where the hell is this? Stereo imagery, stereo expander, okay. It's kind of in the name, all right? Stereo expander. Couple of very simple controls here. Center channel pan, all right? So this is going to allow you, if you don't mess about with the left and right, this actually lets you move the center of content in a stereo file. Yes. So you could, like, let's say you already had a mixed file and the vocals are in the center. You can use this to push everything in the center. Now, again, you might have bass guitar in the center. You might have drums in the center. It's going to allow you to push everything left or right, okay? We're not going to touch that. We're simply going to choose the stereo expand. And in this particular one here, let me turn the effect on. I've got it at around 174%. So let me just bring this back to normal, which is 100%, all right? And then I'm going to go narrow, so you're going to hear it kind of doing just that. It's going to almost make things sound a bit more mono, and then I'll start to widen it, and you'll get to hear the difference, all right? Here we go. So let's narrow it first. Sounds mono, right? All right, now let's go wide. And can you hear now? It's not discrete, but really definitely stereo. Let's go narrow. It's dramatic, right? okay? It's not magic. It does what it's supposed to do, and that's why I say a little can go a long way. You have to be careful because, again, depending upon how a certain file was recorded, it can make things seem just a little too discrete. But for this, I think 170%-ish actually works pretty nicely, okay? So we're going to go ahead and enable that. All right. Now, in this particular example here, I could, in theory, maybe use a little bit of ambient reverb. So if I wanted to, all right, just to show you, I could go up to my send section here under my ambient bar, and I could send this to the ambient submix. That's the one that has the studio reverb with the high end rolled off. Again, so right, and we have total control now independently of how much of this signal we send over there. So if I wanted to do that, all right, of course the music is going there too. I can do that here though, and then this volume control that you're given allows you to adjust how much of that signal you're going to send to the ambience. All right, so it might be a little hard to hear with the music. Let's see what this sounds like. All right, and I'll start to raise this level. Here we go. Okay, so too much. No ambience. And if you're paying attention to the meters, you can see how much I'm adding in there. So by the way, you're going like, oh, but he's negative. He's not sending anything. No, no, no. This actually, it starts at sort of negative infinity. 0 is unity, but that doesn't mean you're at 0 decibels. It's just, this is your range. All right, I think it goes to like, is it 24 decibels? You can send through the, sorry, I'm zoomed in and trying to zoom on this for you. I think it's 15, okay. So typically you're in a negative value. Like you can see I'm sending the music at minus 9.37. So maybe around minus 10, minus 11. All right, we can bypass it. Add a little bit more. Sounds pretty good, okay? So now we're sending a little bit of that to the ambient reverb. Now, another way that you can also expand things is through the use of delay, all right? And there's different types of delay. There's what's known as just a singular delay. So da-da, da-da, da-da. And then there's also something known as a multi-tap delay. So that's like, or a delay with repeats. So a delay with repeats would be da, 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 da. And a multi-tap could be da, 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 da. Or it could be what's also known as a ping pong delay, where it goes between left and right. You're not going to want that for this. But you can use delay to also simulate space, creating space, making things bigger and wider, even if they're in mono. And that's what we're going to tackle now, all right? So let's move over to Audition here, where I have another example for that. Nice. Okay. Holy crap, brilliant. Never thought about how to properly stack dialogue with sound. Oh yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And you know, the more that you experiment, this is how you can create those different types of ambient effects. The key element though there is that those things are being sent pre-fader, okay? As opposed to post-fader. By the way, in the Audition environment, these are our track sends here, all right? And this little button that you see, this is your pre and post, okay? So when it's red, you can see the arrow is showing. So there's the fader on the left and the arrow is after the fader. That means it's being sent post-fader. If you click it, now you can see it's pre-fader. It's before the fader, okay? So this is how you adjust that here in the Audition environment. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this. So this is yet again another example that I've shown here on stream before. This is from a little entirely Adobe stock-driven trailer for a fake movie that I cut together years ago, starring my good friend Michael Shez. And this has some horror elements to it. So I managed to find this very cool, here, I'm gonna solo this so you can kind of just see it silently. this very cool scene of like people screaming behind a glass window. Someone actually filmed this and uploaded this as stock content. I mean, that's where your mind needs to go. But that's how you make money on stock. You gotta have all kinds of things. All right. And then I found a sound effect that would kind of accompany that. So here's what that is. All right. Now that may actually be a couple of stacked screams that I found together. Incidentally, if you go up to the help menu in Audition, talked about this a lot, there's actually a section here called Download Sound Effects and More, and we have over 10,000 royalty-free sound effects that you can access. And I think some of those were used for this scream here. All right. But in this particular part of the scene, I want to do two things. First of all, this sounds a little mono to me. All right. I kind of want this to be bigger. So I'm going to use two different techniques here. We're going to use some delay, and then we're going to use some reverb. But unlike the ambient reverb, I want this to have like a nice tail. I want to feel the ambience long after the scream is gone, because this segues into another part of the edit here. So here's kind of where this sits right now, if you just take a look real quickly. So you can hear there's that reverb trail right there. This doesn't sound too bad because there's a sharp cut to that cello and string section after the screams are over. But I want those screams to, there's no echo. I need to feel more echo. And also, they feel very centered to me, which is fine. It's perfect if this was a Friday the 13th mono movie trailer circa 1980-81. But I want those screams to be a little bit bigger. So for this, I'm going to use a bit of delay. Now, here I am inside of Audition's effects rack. You have effects racks on each of your channels, okay? If you haven't used this UI before. You've got four basic buttons up at the top here. You can see like your track header. The first one here is your inputs and outputs, okay? The second one is your effects. These are inserts. Then you have effects sends. Now, a lot of people ask, what's the difference between an insert and a send? And I talked about this last week and on subsequent streams. Shortest answer is, when you insert an effect, the idea behind it is you're not ever going to change it necessarily. In other words, like if you insert compression because you have a voice that's speaking and the dialogue, the dynamics are all over the place, you insert compression because I don't need to control separately the compressed voice and the dry, non-compressed voice. I always want to be working with a compressed voice. So when you insert something, it's also known as, in the analog and early digital days, as send return. You're sending the signal of that scream to a compressor or to an EQ, or in this case, to a delay, and sending it right back. Because I always want that delay at this specified amount to be applied to those screams. The send gives you more control because you can have post fader, which means that your fader controls the sound with the effect plus the original, or pre fader, as we just showed you, where you have totally independent control. I don't want independent control of this. I want to set it and forget it. So I'm going to use some specific delay. Now you have a couple ways that you can access effects here. Again, in the multi-track environment, you also have a panel as you click on clips, which will give you access to track effects or clip effects. I'm going to do this on the track itself. There's nothing else on here but this scream. All right. So I'm going to use the track effect here, adding some delay. And then the delay can be found under delay and echo. All right. And it's this delay right here. Notice we have three different ones: analog delay, standard delay, and echo. The analog delay allows you to add, remember I was talking about like repeats. So if you want to do the for that, you're going to use analog delay. Echo is very similar. You have, again, you can do sort of ping pongs and things in the echo effect, left to right, stereo bouncing. That one sounds a little more digital to me. I very seldom use echo. And then delay is just basically left and right manipulation. So you have control over what is echoing or what is slapping back or repeating one time in the left channel and the right channel. That's it. No subsequent repeats. All right. So a really simple, old school technique, and they use this, by the way, even today. Not that anybody listens to like commercial radio necessarily, but you still hear it in, stingers and little station IDs for like, whether even Sirius XM or whatever. You know, when you hear Sirius XM playing all the rock, whatever it is, the voice is usually pretty wide, crazy wide, stereo sounding. Well, you can do that with 2 instances of a recorded voice, or if you use a delay time of around 37 milliseconds, and you delay one channel positive 37 milliseconds, and the other channel negative 37 milliseconds, it's instantly going to create this kind of like just wide stereo sounding image very, very quickly. All right. So again, here is our before. Sorry, spotlight. And let's go ahead and turn on the delay. And here is the after. So before, right, sounds very mono, and after. Can you hear it? Say so in the chat. I'm making you use your ears today. You should be able to hear it if you're listening, and even in speakers or headphones. It's just very wide, right? And it just sounds like, oh, it suddenly sounds like we just woke everyone up. Okay, cool. Now, the other element that we want to use here is a reverb send, okay? So what I have here is I created a bus or a subgroup. They're named different things between Premiere and Audition, which you could do simply by right-clicking into a dead space and going to track, stereo or mono bus track. You can also go up to the multi-track menu and do it up here, stereo bus track. Here on this stereo bus track, I've called it Scream Verb. Okay. And on Scream Verb, I'm going to add our studio reverb again. All right. And on the original Scream track here, I'm going to go up to Send 1. Now, as I told you, I want this to be pre-fader. So we're going to click this pre-fader so that I have total control over the ambient reverberated sound over there. All right. And then I'm going to tell it, well, what bus do I want to go to? We're going to go to the Scream Verb bus. All right. And then just like in Premiere, here is your amount. Oh, and it went back to post fader. Okay, click it again. So this is how much you're sending to that reverb. Okay. So here in the Studio Reverb effect, again, maybe we start with something like a preset. So I want this to feel kind of echoey, kind of creepy, kind of dark. So a good way to do that, 8-Bit Blood was talking about like a cave. There might be a cave. There's cave in one of the other reverbs. This Great Hall is a really nice, warm sounding one. Now, because this is pre-fader, again, the trick here is I don't want any dry signal on this. So I'm going to turn the dry all the way down, okay? And let's increase the wet to around 80%, all right? Now, as far as room size, I have this set at 70. Let's see what that does. Decay, 6,000 milliseconds, all right? So that's 6 seconds of decay. That might be a little bit long, but it could be just right. Early reflections. Now, I don't want to hear too much of that reverb up front. We already have it very stereo. So I don't want to use a lot of early reverberation because that's going to cloud the stereo image. That's a really good thing to, I almost said to write down, but no one's going to write it. Note that. If you're trying to create the essence of like decay after the fact, use fewer early reflections, all right? It just kind of isolates the decay, or what's also known as the tail of the reverb. So I'm going to back this off to around even like 10%. Width, we're going to take advantage of that delay effect there. So I want this to be fairly wide. High frequency cut, again, the hall by nature, because concert halls are warm. Classical concert halls are very warm sounding. 4,000 hertz, probably pretty good. Low frequency cut, 300, pretty standard there. Damping, fine. Diffusion, let's leave that at the default there. All right, and then let's play this back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a section that we can kind of loop here, since it's fairly short, so we can listen to what the tail of that reverb sounds like, okay? So let's start around -7 and hear what that sounds like. Did you hear that? You hear the tail of the reverb when it's done? Let's increase this, go even a little more. I like it. Let's back off on the damping a bit. You hear how I backed off on the damping? You're hearing like more of the sort of lower mid-range of the echo, right? Because it's not damping all of those frequencies quite as much. Let's go to around 80. Nice, Latoga. Okay. Tony, hear somebody's listening mono. Okay. One more time. Okay, and just for reference here, here's the before. All right, and actually, if we want to be completely before, here is no delay, no widening, no reverb. It just sounds kind of like a sound effect. And now here it is with the reverb and the delay. And now when we bring it back into the context of everything, it's almost like the crescendos with those strings right there, right? Just kind of glues it all together. So a really nice, easy way to leverage, again, pre-fader reverb, in this case, for very long decays, using this as an effect, right, as for sound design, not just for ambience. And then also leveraging delay, a very simple, also known as a slapback. In fact, I think there's even like a, do we have a, yeah, tape slap and slapback. This will give you kind of those Elvis-y 50s style effects, you know, a single repeat, right? But this is a great way to, again, widen a somewhat mono clip with delay and then add a little bit of reverb to put it in a much larger, creepier, darker space with some pre-fader reverb, all right? Getting more spatial, yes. Cornell, sounds much better than before these tweaks? Yes. Or did you mean it sounded better before I started tweaking it? It's very mono and dry. I mean, for me, that's not what I wanted. But if you like it, that's, you know, hey, everybody has a different opinion. Okay, so let's switch sessions here and talk a little bit about equalization and using, again, compression on a group to control dialogue, all right? So in this scene, this is actually the film that we used last week on the stream here. I have two people talking, and I've sent their dialogue to a submix, to a group here. And on that group, we're going to add a little bit of compression to even out the dynamics between the speakers, as well as a little bit of equalization. Now, again, when you're using compression in this way, the idea is that we're trying to make all the dialogue kind of the same even delivery. Oftentimes, and this particular project is no different, and I haven't tweaked it on purpose, there are just some clips, because many of them were probably overdubbed or, you know, dialogue replaced in the studio, where you may have to individually adjust either dynamics or just individual volumes of certain clips because they might be just too loud in general. They were just recorded hotter than the previous clip because maybe it was during a different take or something like that. So this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use some compression on the group to even everything out. And then also use a little bit of group EQ to also homogenize the sound. Now, as I mentioned in last week's mixing sound to picture stream, just like with each video clip, first we color treat and correct individual clips in a scene, then we maybe match cameras, and then we give everything an overall grade. Well, sound is the same. You want to kind of mix, clean up, EQ, and compress individual clips or tracks. If the dynamics never change, you can use the same effects on an insert for compression and EQ. And then you also have the ability to group things together and then add, again, like you would add a LUT, a display LUT for like your final grade. That's what applying this compression and EQ to this grouped master is. It's like adding an adjustment layer, right? Non-destructive, and it only affects the signals that are sent to it, okay? Just checking our chats here. Okay, what's up, Jim? What's up, Igor? Okay, so let's take a listen. Oh, and you know what? Actually, to illustrate some decent use of EQ, I was going to first start with some of the music here. So for those of you who haven't heard this one yet, take a listen. So this is some music composed by myself and my oft collaborator, Fet Fung. It's an unreleased track from one of our ambient records that we've done, and it has just this kind of creepy vibe. So just take a quick listen to this. We'll get started here.
But Dwayne, I don't even have any of the money. Amy she split and took it all.
Well, I talked to Amy. She came to see me. You see, she's what they call professional, and you're what they call can't win for losing.
Okay. So let's talk about rolling off frequencies. Now remember, I just showcased to you 20 minutes ago or so that high frequency cut in the reverb, and you could very clearly hear how it was, as I was adjusting that slider, attenuating 20 kilohertz, 18 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, 1 kilohertz, and we went all the way down to around 897 hertz, cutting off all that high frequency. Well, the parametric EQ allows you to boost and cut. So you can cut frequencies, you can boost frequencies, you can roll off frequencies. You just have full control over every element of every frequency on your clip. And that goes for voices and it goes for music. So one of the tricks that I'll often do to, again, kind of make an otherwise very bright sounding clip darker is to roll off a lot of the highs. And for this, I really liked the use of this track. But here is the original sound of this. Let me go ahead and solo this music track here. And if I put the dialogue back in here, because it has a lot of that high end in the percussion, it's fighting with the same frequencies where the dialogue is.
But Dwayne, I don't even have any of the money. Amy she split and took it all.
All right, occupying too much of the same space. So I'm going to come over to my track over here and go into the parametric equalizer. Now, by the way, I initially had done this in Premiere, which is why I added the parametric as an insert. When you're in Audition, okay, on each track, you already have the parametric equalizer available to you. The only difference is that in this case, I'm EQing, and then I'm actually doing some inserted reverb, again, just for ambience, because it's not changing here. This EQ happens after all of those effects. Okay, so if you use this track EQ, this is your signal flow. All right, input, output, effects insert, power. There's also your polarity reverse, your phase invert, sends, EQ. All right, so the EQ happens after all of this. In this case, I have the EQ happening first. So if I were to EQ this, it's EQing the parametric and the studio reverberated effect, okay? It's just order of operations, but this EQ exists everywhere. So if I didn't use this one right here, I could simply double click right in here. Here's the parametric EQ. This is automatically on every track in Audition, just like it is on all good mixers. Again, if I go ahead and re-enable this, double click it up here, notice it's the exact same effect, okay? And then all I've done for this is use what are known as the high pass and low pass filters. Now these are used in music all over today, super powerful, super effective. And what they do is they allow you to very sharply cut off, in this case, high frequency, allowing low frequencies to pass through, and then to cut off low frequency, allowing high frequency to pass through. So if I turn these off, all right, actually let's turn it on, and let's just go back up to full range here, all right? So low pass means I'm going to allow low frequencies to come through, low pass, high cut. Low frequency passes through, cut high frequency. This down arrow, this drop down here, this is the amount of decibels per octave. So the more aggressive you want that cut to be, the more dB per octave, and you'll be able to see how it adjusts the curve as we do this accordingly. When we start to cut more, I'll show you. So I'm going to play this. Let's solo the music here. Actually, let's keep everything in, and I'm going to start rolling off that high end. Again, allowing low to pass through, cutting off the highs. Here we go.
Well, I talked to Amy and she came to see me. You see, she's what they call professional, and you're what they call can't win for losing.
She tell you she took it all? She took the whole damn score?
What she did is she paid me what she owed me for her half. And then you're gonna pay me what you
Okay. So could you hear how we're taking out that high end? And now we're going to do the opposite. This has got some low end rumble. There's some like real flubby subsonic stuff going on in there. And I don't really need that. So for this, it's right around 124 hertz. So let's go ahead and back this off so you're hearing everything. And then again, I'm going to adjust this till we get to around 124. Take a listen.
But Dwayne, I don't even have any of the money. Amy she split and took it all.
Well, I talked to Amy and she came to see me.
Let's kick off
See,
the high
she's
pass.
what they call professional, and you're what they call can't win for losing.
She tell you she took it all? She took the whole...
All right. So you can hear by cutting everything below 130 hertz. And by the way, this is where you can see how steep the curve is. This is a 24 dB per octave curve. Here would be a 48. It's very, very steep. All right. And then here's a 6, less steep. So this is going to allow a lot more of the adjacent frequencies to pass through. That's not what I want here, though. I want to really kind of cut them off, but I want to leave just some of the essence of the low end in there. So I'm going to use 24 dB per octave, which again gives me kind of a nice sharp curve. And I went a little more aggressive on the high end. So here's the before.
I don't even have any of the money. Amy she split and took it all.
After.
Well, I talked to Amy and she came to see me. You see, she's what they call professional, and you're what they call can't win for losing.
Okay? High pass, low pass. Super useful. Not only good for music, it's also good for dialogue. A lot of times, all of my mics here, I have all the bass rolled off at 80 hertz. If you simply want to do a quick roll off, get rid of that subsonic rumble from a capture, you can use the high pass, low cut. See, even I get confused. To just roll off everything below 80 hertz. All right. Last thing here in our last minute is just very quickly, again, using the Dialog with some compression. All right. So here I have my tube modeled compressor. All right. I've already dialed this in. I always talk about we already have presets here, which will allow you to do things like, thicken the voice or boost it. The key to using any of these presets is adjusting the threshold level. Now, compression is a whole separate course here. We're not going to do that today. If you want to learn more about compression, go watch last week's Mixing Sound to Picture or check out Audio 101 Episode 8 on my YouTube channel, Jason Levine Video, to understand how all of this works. But by applying a compressor with basically what's similar to that voice thickener preset, it's going to just unify all the dialogue together to be around the same level.
I don't even have any of the money. Amy she split and took it all.
Well, I talked to Amy. She came to see me. You see, she's what they call professional, And you're what they call can't win for losing.
Okay. Dynamically, they're all at the same level, about the same loudness, using a little bit of compression here. And then I also inserted a parametric EQ here just to remove a little bit of the boxiness, which is around 513 hertz. And then you can see that I'm using my fifth band here to give a little bit of a lift at around 12.8K, just to add some sparkle, a little bit of brightness on those voices. So let's take a look first without.
But Dwayne, I don't even have any of the money.
Let's kick it
Amy
in.
she split and took it all.
Well, I talked to Amy. She came to see me.
Out.
You see, she's what they call professional.
In.
And you're what they call can't win for losing.
Everything.
She tell you she took it all? She took the whole damn score?
What she did is she paid me what she owed me for her half.
Okay. So real quickly, just using a little bit of EQ, some compression, just kind of glues all of that together very simply. We showcased some delay, we showcased reverb for both ambience and spatial effects, and these are just some of the incredible things you can do with audio mixing for picture, all right, using effects and delay effects carefully. All right, everyone, we've got the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge coming up next, so as always, thank you so much for watching. You'll be able to catch the replays here on Adobe Live, and until next time, we'll see you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.